Good morning, everybody. And I should probably say good evening or good afternoon because we do record these and put them on the lovely YouTubes for people to consume after the fact. But this is, of course, a live event coming to you from a Friday morning on November 17th, 2023, the last Friday before Thanksgiving here in the United States of America. So happy Thanksgiving to all of my American friends. Happy belated Thanksgiving to my Canadian friends because that happens in October. I think like more correctly tied to the solstice. Isn't that it? It wasn't like a kind of a pagan fall festival thing, and then the U.S. moved it into November to kind of create a consumer season around. I don't know, history of Thanksgiving. Let's be thankful. I'm thankful you're here. I'm thankful you are attending. I'm thankful maybe you are subscribing to the CDO Matters podcast. Thank you. I'm thankful for you consuming any of my content on LinkedIn. I'm thank you for commenting on any of my comments or my rants or posts on LinkedIn. I'm thankful. I really, really live a charmed life. It's pretty cool that an old dog like me can learn a bunch of new tricks, including having a podcast and being on LinkedIn and sharing what I know. After 30 years of kind of being in the data world and doing what I do, it is really honestly a gift to be able to do this and share what I know, and do it in a way that I never thought that I would, right? Through these channels. And it's just a really, really, really great job. And it's a great company. Thank you, Prophecy. I'm incredibly grateful for my employer and the things that they let me to do, the flexibility that they give me. I'm just like overwhelmed with gratitude. I think for me to opine here just a little bit, gratitude is a really kind of underutilized emotion, I think, these days. I think the world would just be a much better place writ large if we were a lot more grateful for everything. I live in the greatest country in the world, and I've been afforded so many wonderful things, having grown up in the second greatest country in the world, in Canada. Sorry, my Canadian folks. See, I said it in Canadian. Sorry. But yes, I think the United States has greater potential just because of the structure and the governance and the Constitution. But Canada is a great place too. So is Europe. Just came from there. But I think the world would be just a better place if we were all more grateful, because we are lucky. We're lucky to be doing what we do. We are lucky to be here. And all it takes is to turn on the computer or the television or Twitter or whatever you want to call it and see where people aren't as lucky. It gets me choked up because it's like, oh my God, like things that are happening. And here I am, in my little beach house in Florida. I live a really charmed life and I'm grateful for it. And I'm just, it's horrible what's happening in other parts of the world. Anyway, enough of that. Thanksgiving. I'm grateful. I'm thankful. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for everybody being here. Paul, from Rotterdam. Nice to see you, Paul. I love Rotterdam. I spent a number of days in Rotterdam in the past. I actually stayed in Amsterdam while I was doing business in Rotterdam, and the train system in the Netherlands is so good, you can actually do that. I was staying very close to the main train station in Amsterdam, got on a train, went to Rotterdam. 45 minutes later, I'm doing business all day. And then I was back in Amsterdam. You can kind of do that. Anyway, Paul, thank you for joining. Jennifer, hello. Hey, Canada. Thank you, Jennifer from Canada. I'm from Edmonton. All my family is still in Edmonton. Yesterday, I just booked my flight home to go back for Christmas to see my family. Gulp. Holy cow, airfares. Yikes. I was looking at airfares to fly from where I am here in Florida to Edmonton, and they were all coming like $2,000. Like, good gravy. Yes, I know I may have probably waited a little too long, but holy. Yeah, looking forward to being back at Edmonton over the Christmas season and the snow and the ice and everything, and particularly family. Miss my family dearly living here in the U.S., but glad you could join, Jennifer. Hello, Karen from Kansas City. Some of the greatest barbecue in the world. Now, it's a second place. I'm sorry, I got to break it to you. Kansas City barbecue is not as good as Texas barbecue. I lived in Texas 20 years. Go to Austin, some amazing barbecue. But Kansas City, close second. Mahendra, hello. Jesse from Edmonton. All right, my people, Jesse, 12 degrees here today. Okay, so Jesse, are you doing that for you saying that in American for us? I should look because I have Edmonton set as one of my defaults in on the weather app. If you're saying 12 for the benefit of your American friends, which you probably are, it says 35. That's not too bad in Edmonton. That's like it's above freezing. That's for this time of year. That's pretty good. Jesse only speaks in Canadian. Right on. I can go back and forth. I can do either. I can say Tuke and Chesterfield, and yeah, I can do that when I need to. Oh gosh, I'm on a full ramble today. Partially because my brain is a little because I'm just getting over what I'm pretty sure was COVID. I don't know. I tested yesterday and it said negative on the COVID, but it's like I'm checking all the I was checking all the COVID boxes on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Low grade fever, just frazzled brain, coughing. Oh my goodness, the coughing, on and on and on. I feel like a human today, thank goodness. Yay for humanity. And like I said, I tested negative last night, so I don't know whether I had it or not. At this point, whatever. I was sick in the early half of the week. Probably caught it on an airplane coming back from the UK, where I was all of last week. Thank you, IRM, an amazing organization over in the UK that puts on events, holds conferences, particularly focused in the data and analytics realm. Last week was the IRM Enterprise Data Conference, and where I was honored to hold CDO panels there. 2 days of CDO panels, had some great discussions on all sorts of stuff. We'll share that with you guys today. Of course, big topic, AI. I made a pledge to my LinkedIn followers a few posts ago about putting on more practical content and not so much focused on the shiny stuff. But when you're out there and you're talking to CDOs and you're talking to data leaders like I am, and I have been for 2 months straight. I've been on the road literally 2 months straight. Not complaining. I love it. Not complaining. It is a little draining and you tend to get sick and you tend to get a little homesick. But when you're out there talking with folks, it's just AI, AI, AI. So we'll talk about that a little bit more today. I've got, I think, some useful information, I hope, in how you, as a data practitioner, as a data leader, can become more AI ready. That seems to be the topic out there these days, right? We've gone from the kind of the initial, for lack of a better phrase, shock and awe of ChatGPT and the kind of the wave of AI that started hitting just about a year ago. ChatGPT was launched in November of 2022. Somebody calling me, potential spam. If it's really potential spam, why doesn't the phone just block it, right? If the phone knows, like, just block it. I'm not answering it. So ChatGPT kind of came on about a year ago, and there was a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. A lot of optimism, a lot of FUD, still a lot of FUD out there. But companies are really kind of trying to figure out what it all means, and rightfully so, trying to figure out what it all means. And that's really kind of the one of the things that people are talking about the most out there. Of course, people are talking about digital transformation still. They're still talking about cloud migrations. They're talking about, how to generate more value from data and analytics. They're talking about data science because of things going on with AI. So we'll talk more today. Who else do we have? I'm just looking through our chat. If you got questions, this isn't Ask Me Anything, by the way, guys, right? So you don't have to just listen to me ramble. The best way to stop me is to throw a virtual shoe, ask me a question. What do you think an ex-Gartner analyst, somebody who has co-authored 3 Magic Quadrant documents and a whole slew of research related to data governance, data strategy, master data management, what would you want to ask that person? Because he's sitting right here. So if you do have questions, I'm happy to answer them and pepper in spicy anecdotes in between the insightful questions you may or may not have. Or maybe it's just Friday after a long week and you're just chilling, and maybe you're eating an early lunch on the East Coast, or maybe you're just sipping on your coffee on the West Coast. Maybe you're like all over in Europe and maybe enjoying an adult beverage on a Friday evening. That'd be lovely too. Um, I love going over to Europe, especially with Netherlands and Belgium so close by. I'm a beer person, beer guy. Growing up Canadian, you kind of have to be. Well, you don't have to be, of course. But I love the Belgian beer. That was one of the disappointments. Kind of, I made a post about this on LinkedIn a few days ago, talking about some of the peculiarities that I see in London. Some of the Londoners, I think, got a little riled up, thinking that I was being overly negative. I'm not. London is an amazing city. Kidding me? London is one of the best cities on the planet, but it does have its peculiarities, and one of them is there's pubs everywhere, and they're vibrant and they're alive, and they're like these little beehives of just community and activity and conversation and debate. You can still have a debate in a pub in London, and you can go like it's pubs for somebody like me. They're a fantastic place to go and just kind of soak in the culture and soak in the ambiance. And of course they're not uniquely, London. There are pubs everywhere. I mean, go to Dublin for heaven's sakes. But I love to go to pubs and just kind of just hang out, have conversations, and I'm a beer guy. And then you go into the pubs in London, and it's like they've been taken over by these large kind of mega corporations. So they've kind of become chain operations, right? Where you get the same menus over and over and over and the same beers over and over and over. And if you're going for like the menu of 300 craft beers, you ain't going to find it. Not going to happen at a pub in London. Just not going to. Lots of other peculiarities in London as well, that I ranted about in my LinkedIn post, including my hatred of the toilet seats over there. This may be TMI, but I just find them to be incredibly uncomfortable. You couldn't design them for more discomfort. Like if your purpose was discomfort, you like if that was the RFP for a toilet seat in the UK, check. You're nailing it. You are killing it. Toilet seat manufacturers in the UK. If the desired outcome is discomfort, you're doing it. And there I sit precariously trying to figure out, well, why, right? Is this a throughput thing? Here's how data people think, right? This is like, I'm an analyst, right? And I was like, okay, these are just miserably uncomfortable, but why? Maybe there's a purpose, right? Is this like a throughput thing? Are they trying to keep the wheels turning and don't dawdle, to do your business and move on? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's just like we've always done it this way thing. I don't know. Juxtapose UK toilet seats to Japanese toilet seats. It's like night and day. Like you go to Japan, it's like there's like angels singing. There's like all these buttons. Now they tend to be a little complicated. There's all these buttons with the Japanese labels. You're like, what does that do? What does that do? Anyway, yeah. Enough about toilet seats. Jesse, have you seen any preferred or interesting ways of handling UOM problems in MDM? UOM. What's UOM, Jesse? I should probably know this, being a so-called expert. UOM problems. We're a large distribution company that sells everything and everything. It would lead to 5 different units of measure for every product. Oh, good grief. That's a problem. The unit we stock it, all sell it, buy it, transfer it all, etc., which isn't always the same location to location. I believe UOM is inherently master data, which is the best way to control that in MDM. UOM, Universal Order Management. What you're describing is what I would call reference data, right? Weights, measures, dimensions, things that should be consistent. So if you're a distributor and you're in the manufacturing space, you could be distributing electrical components, you could be HVAC systems, you could be distributing, anything. I used to have these conversations often at, case, pack, box, unit of measure. Classic reference data where you would assume, knock, knock, where you would assume that there should be some agreement within your space around units of measure. UOM, unit of measure. I blame the COVID. Maybe. I should have known that, I guess. But yeah, reference data. you would assume that there's some singularity, some commonality there. I mean, I don't know how a complex supply chain, or distribution chain would operate without some consistency there. But if there's not, that's a classic MDM problem, right? It's a classic MDM problem. And MDM systems and MDM as a discipline is used to solve for that problem. I would argue it was kind of the genesis. Reference data is the genesis of MDM. How do we have a single consistent view of things that everybody agrees should have single, consistent, trusted, accurate, curated attributes, whether that is a weight, a measure, dimension, a temperature, a stock ticker. The list of potential reference data is long. For somebody in your place, it's a little difficult because you don't control the source, right? So if you're in kind of like in the middle between consumers and suppliers, which I assume you are, if you said you're a distribution company, my eyes are holding. Yeah, distribution. You're in the middle, so you don't get to control the source data. So I could be going into way too many weeds here in the data in the solution, but you get it as it comes in, right? And then you need to change it or resolve it to some master record, right? Where you're looking at all of these, these varieties of the measures, or variety, like a pallet versus a skid versus what you know your data better than I do, Jesse. But where you are using MDM, including probably technology, by the way, to create a single version of that unit of measure, so that regardless of whatever it comes in, that you can't change, right? So what you're going to try to basically do is create a lookup table, right? By probably manufacturer, right? Where you can say, here's what it is. And then you apply a consistent rule to it to say, every time I see this, then make it this, right? The problems will be that, then you need to figure out, okay, what are you going to do with it when you push it downstream? And you probably already have that figured out. And I suspect that in the middle, there's probably human beings that are doing all these reconciliations between these systems and all these units of measure. Classic MDM use case, perfect, a great fit for any off-the-shelf MDM product like a Prophecy. We do it quite well. I would argue reference data is a master data use case. Historically, there have been kind of standalone reference data management, RDM solutions. But when we were at Gartner, we basically considered them the same thing. RDM and MDM is the same thing. RDM is basically just reference data management is an MDM use case, because all RDM is master data with very, very strict rules and very, very strict controls over who can do, who can change, who can add. So yeah, classic MDM, I'd be looking at some sort of technology to help with the problem. But of course, MDM is not just about technology. There are people and process changes needed there too. Happy to connect more offline, Jesse. But yeah, that's a common problem in the MDM space, and one that is, I don't want to say easily solvable, because nothing here is really easy. But reference data is one of the more, shall we say, digestible use cases in our space. So thanks for the question. That's awesome. Case pack box. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I covered on everything. So let's talk about being more AI ready. When I was out talking to a lot of data leaders, there's really kind of three things, after thinking about this in the plane and thinking about this a lot over the last couple of months. I see there really kind of being three things that data leaders need to focus on. And spoiler alert, it doesn't have much to do with technology per se. Yes, technology is kind of the driving force here, but to become more AI ready, I think is really mostly about knowledge and mindset. You're going to need to operationalize that knowledge. You're going to need to operationalize AI within your organization, because if you aren't, you're going to be left behind. Horses out of the barn. This is happening. We can have all sorts of academic discussions about whether we should or whether we shouldn't, or whether there's impacts to people's jobs or productivity or larger societal things that are going on, and things like ethics, and all part of the discussion. But the fact of the matter is, if your organization is not trying to figure out how to drive value from artificial intelligence, you're behind. You're behind. And it will be transformational in our space. I have a lot of posts about this. Look to any of my previous posts on LinkedIn related to what I call the data fabric. I think I did a really good summary on CDO Matters on the podcast about what I call the data fabric. Look for a episode titled The Data Fabric Demystified. I think that'll be very, very helpful to understand where I see kind of the integration of AI into the data and analytics space. I'll continue to have more content here. I do think it's transformational. I happen to think we will be able to automate a lot of data quality and a lot of data governance. It's coming. It's not next week, it's not next month, but it's coming. Point being, if you are not evolving your data strategy to integrate AI, if you are not asking questions about how to integrate AI into data management, governance, quality, you name it, then you're kind of behind the ball. You're behind the ball. I did see some questions come in. So I'm going to talk about the three things that I see as being really important right now for everybody in the data and analytics space to become more AI ready. But I do want to touch on Mahendra's question. Is MDM with clean data, which can be matched? I have three more. Is MDM with clean data, which can be matched? Where did it go? Merged, survived, and required in the new gen. Yes. So Mahendra is asking the role of MDM in the future. It's interesting that you should mention this. If you search our YouTube channel, I believe it's on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and you search prophecy, our YouTube channel will come up. And on that YouTube channel, you will, if you search for something called the future of MDM. So I actually did an hour-long presentation on this at our most recent Data Hero Summit. So it's the Prophecy Data Hero Summit. But I did an hour-long discussion about this. And I've been giving an hour-long discussion about the future of MDM for most of the last year, including at a lot of very cool locations known as Microsoft Technology Centers, because we're partnered with Microsoft. That hour-long presentation will give you deeper insights into what I see the future of MDM being. But yes, the short answer here, Vander, is absolutely positively. Master data management as a discipline will continue in the world of AI. Now, I do happen to believe that AI will drive significant opportunities for automation in things like creating and managing max rules, to your point, matching, merging, surviving. I think we are going to see a lot of automation there. I think we're going to see a lot of automation around rules. I will just loosely say rules in general. Things like the rules used to create a gold master record, the rules used to even identify what is and what isn't master data, the rules around things like even modeling a customer master record, what fields, what attributes are master data attributes and which are not. These things are purpose-built, I think, if you ask me, for AI, right? Doing things like applying advanced analytics like knowledge graphs, maybe even a little AI ML against extremely large data sets to understand where's data widely shared. This is the definition of master data. In essence, data that is widely shared across the organization that needs consistent definitions, quality standards, structure, governance. It's master data, stuff that's shared everywhere. Customer, product, asset, location. Today, humans are deciding what is and what isn't master data based on what we think we know about the business, right? Customer, kind of a layup. Of course, it's important. It's going to be widely shared across the organization. Product, asset, location. The UOM, the unit of measure data that Jesse was talking about earlier. Stuff is widely shared. It needs consistent rules. In an AI-enabled future, that's not going to change. We will still have data that is widely shared. So MDM isn't going away, but it will be significantly, in the beginning, what I call augmented, moving towards a future of automation. What does augmented mean? Augmented means a world where machines are recommending things to people, right? So very soon, very, very soon, we will start to see situations where AI is looking at all of our data, all of our enterprise data across ERP, CRM, digital automation systems, supply chain systems, you name it. It's going to look everywhere, and it'll be able to figure out pretty quickly by running knowledge graphs and by running other advanced analytics where data is widely shared, where it needs those rules. Today, humans pretty much guess at it. We think it's important, so we model it. We build tables, we build joins to model relationships that exist from customer data to product data, say, for example. In the future, machines are going to augment that process. They will suggest things, and humans will say yes or no, right? I accept that or I reject that. Generally, they're going to accept it because the machines could do this at scale, so we simply cannot. That's the near term. Longer term, a lot of that will start to get automated. It just will. It just will, because again, machines can operate at scales that we just cannot. We just cannot. So yes, MDM is highly relevant in the future because data needs to be widely shared in the future. As long as we're sharing data, as long as we operate as functional silos within organizations, sales, marketing, finance, and as long as each of those organizations want to do things a little differently, right? Sales wants to call customer a prospect, or this definition of a customer, and finance has got a slightly different definition. As long as those differences exist, and they always will, because everybody thinks their business lines are unique and their needs are unique. As long as those differences exist, MDM needs to exist to resolve the differences between them. So the future of MDM is bright because it has to be, because of the way our organizations operate, because we drive efficiency when we share data. The only way to share data is to have common rules. The only way to enforce the rules is MDM. Ta-da! I'm kind of punchy today. I don't know why. Maybe because it's Friday. Oh, okay, cool, Mahendra. Great. Yeah, welcome you to go check out that episode. Or I don't think we've... Anyway, it's on the Prophecy channel. Look for the future of MDM. Maybe even Google. The Googles can find it. Business leaders are of the view that we take ChatGPT, give the transactional data of sales, procurement, and customer service, and just ask questions of the private GPT-4. Okay, this is a great... So Mahendra is basically saying, hey, can we use our internal data through the lens of an LLM? This is a great segue to what I was trying to talk about before. We still have half an hour. Boy, because I can rant on this for half an hour. I can rant on this for days. But the short answer to the question is, I think your business leaders are right, Mahendra. I think you can, right? You can use your internal data against a private version of GPT-4. Now, this is the important disclaimer, right? I don't want to be, reckless in my recommendations, but GPT-4 can run in your private instance of Azure, right? So in your Azure tenant, if you are running, OpenAI, GPT-4, OpenAI on your Azure tenant, the data is just staying right there. It's not being used. It's not going out into the wild. So yes, you can, and you can use it now, today. Companies are doing this stuff today, like right now. Acknowledging that, of course, there are hallucinations, and of course, there are problems with accuracy. But there are certainly many use cases here, folks, where that's arguably less problematic. Arguably less problematic. Now it all comes down to your business, right? Maybe you don't want any hallucinations at all, hard stop, period. And I can understand that, but there are ways to mitigate those hallucinations. If you look at my LinkedIn post a couple weeks ago, I talk about this at length. There are patterns known as RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation patterns, where basically you can use things like vector databases, knowledge graphs, or even really just simply highly constrained prompts. This is the good thing about GPT-4, or at least GPT-4 Turbo that was announced last week at the OpenAI Developer Conference. They've gone 16x in the amount of text that you can put into a prompt. So keep me honest here. It was like 12K to 128K, something like that. I should know the exact numbers, but you can now, in a prompt, you can now put a 300-page book. Roughly equivalent to 300 pages of text, right? So you can use a 300-page book to constrain the results of an LLM, right? So what Mahendra's talking about in the question is, can I use some of my internal data and throw it over to an LLM to have the LLM tell me things about that data that I didn't otherwise know? Answer, yes, you absolutely positively can. And I think you should be doing that, particularly for certain use cases, more marketing, sales use cases where there are less concerns about the accuracy, but at the very least, doing some testing. And a lot of companies are doing that. Now, I wouldn't caution these tokens aren't free, right? The text that you put into the system associated to tokens, there's a charge for each of the tokens, and then what you get back, there's a charge for that. So I would not, don't trust me as the guy who knows how much all of this costs. I wouldn't. But at a high level, what you're describing is what's called a RAG pattern, where you can be very specific in your prompt. In your prompt, basically, you're saying, if what I'm telling you is true, if you use this data as a fact set, right? If you use this data as your only reference source, so forget all that internet stuff that you learned, forget internet prior to 2021, forget that. Your universe knowledge is what I'm about to hand you, right? That could be in a vector, it could be in a knowledge graph, it could just be in 300 pages of text, it could even be in a URL. What I'm about to hand you is true, right? If this is true, then summarize this and tell me these things about what I'm providing you. We know this is an effective way to limit these hallucinations significantly. I can't give you a mathematical number and what that is because I don't know what you're going to be submitting. I don't know the quality of the data you're going to be submitting into these models. But that is a great way, and it is how it's a great way to get value from LLMs now. It's a great way to limit hallucinations now. And I actually think that the pattern, Mahendra, that you're kind of describing here, which is known as a RAG, RAG pattern, you can Google that RAG pattern, is how AI, or I should say generative AI, vis-a-vis large language models, will be operationalized within most companies in the short term. Great question. Thank you. So let's get back to the three things that I think we, as data people, data practitioners, business leaders, need to do to become a little more AI ready. All right, let's do it. I need a coffee for this. I'm still coffee here. Well, it's because I was partially sick too. All right, number one, what I saw and what I've heard in my conversations over the last year with data leaders, literally all around the planet, well, Europe and North America, was a really significant and problematic gap in knowledge around how AI works, particularly generative AI and particularly large language models. If we are going to be AI ready, we as data people, right, generally where AI lives in an organization, right? AI, vis-a-vis some form of a data science or machine learning organization, generally lives in the data analytics function, right? So if we are data leaders, if we are CDOs and we're out there, we need to start learning this stuff. We just do. If you need to call it AI literacy, okay, but it's not about literacy. It's just about understanding what you do for a living, right? If we were talking about football and you're a football coach, well, then you need to go learn how football works, or a car, right? All of a sudden somebody invented a new car, right? Or a new drivetrain or something. You wouldn't be saying car literacy. You'd just be saying, I need to go figure this stuff out because it's what I do for a living. And if you need to slap the literacy label on it, okay, fine. One of my dear friends, Bill Schmarzo, wrote an amazing book called AI Literacy. Oh my gosh, I read it. I should know the title. Becoming more AI literate, basically. And that's fine if you need to put a literacy label on it. I just like the literacy label because I think it's judgmental. And this isn't about judgment. This is about like just upping our game, folks. We need to up our game. How do I know that there's a knowledge gap in technology when it comes to AI? Well, because of the questions I would be asked or the things that I was hearing over and over and over again. I'll give you an example. Most of the people that I talked to over the last year think they are going to be training large language models. What I would hear over and over and over again is our data estate is in shambles. It's a mess. Our data is a mess. And it's not ready to train LLMs. How are we going to train LLMs? I can't train an LLM using this data. I'd hear that over and over and over and over again. Do you know how many companies are training LLMs? I can't give you an exact answer because I don't know, but it's like probably on this hand, on these hands. Well, maybe a handful in the Fortune 100, and it's Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, a few others, right? And the reason why is because training an LLM from scratch is a ridiculously, incredibly time-consuming and expensive undertaking. For example, Twitter, aka X, just launched Grok, a brand new large language model. Okay. To do it, it took 4 months of nonstop compute using in what X describes as tens of thousands of GPUs, graphical processing units, CPU, but more powerful. Tens of thousands of GPUs running nonstop for 4 months on end. Yeah, that's what's required to train an LLM. Yet in my conversations, like I would hear like over and over and over again, this idea that somehow that the average VP of data and analytics would be training an LLM using their CRM data. And people were freaking out because it's like, how am I ever going to use this data to train an LLM? And I'm like, you're not. You're not. Unless you're like one of the largest of the large companies, to train a large language model requires millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And why would you do that when there are commercially available versions of them out there that are pretty reasonable and are pretty powerful? In the future, I think the cost to build these large language models, the accessibility of the technology, accessibility to resources of people who know how to do this. By the way, you're talking about a limited number of people who even have these skills, who are getting, I guarantee you, paid ridiculous sums of money to work for the Twitter, to the X's of the world and the open AIs of the world. So you got a limited resource set, you got a limited number of companies, you got bags and bags of money needed to do this. In the future, maybe those costs will come down. Maybe quantum computing will make this more accessible to other companies. But my point being here, guys, is you are not going to train an LLM. Most companies are not. What you'll do is what Mahendra suggested earlier. What you'll do is you will find ways to manipulate existing LLMs to produce consistent, predictable, more accurate outputs to support data management use cases like MDM and data quality and on and on and on. So that's just one example where there's this belief out there that we're all just going to be training LLMs when we're talking about a handful of companies here, folks. Like, and unless you've got tens of thousands of GPUs just sitting around not getting used, maybe you can. But if you are just an average company out there, you're not going to be doing it. So we need to up our game around how these technologies work. What's actually really going on, right? Particularly LLMs and particularly generative AI. We need to figure out how these things work. And as long as we don't, as long as we are in this mindset that our data is somehow not ready and that magic needs to happen to the data in order to use AI, well, you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage, because I can tell you what, your data isn't ready, at least through that lens. Nobody's data is probably that ready. But this leads me to point number 2. So number 1, if you want to be more AI ready, figure out how this stuff works, figure it out quickly. Now, you don't need to become an expert, but you just need to know how these things work so that you can guide your organization and make smarter decisions about where to invest and where not to invest. Spoiler alert, you're probably not going to be training your own LLM. Number 2, in the world of extremely advanced analytics, and this is what this is, right? This is advanced analytics. Artificial intelligence is advanced analytics. It is predictive analytics. It's predictive and prescriptive, telling people what to do, right? Guessing what's going to happen in the future, right? Generative AI is unique capability in this space. But we're talking about advanced analytics. In this world of extremely advanced analytics, things are different than they are in old school pie chart, bar graph, operational analytical worlds. Okay. In that old school world of operational analytics, we often use the phrase garbage in, garbage out. And I think we all understand what it means. I think it's problematic for other reasons. I don't know how many companies are calling their raw materials garbage. I don't think that Levi's would call their denim garbage, or Frito-Lay would call their corn garbage, but this is a separate issue. I don't like the garbage in term, because that's our gold. That's our oil. And speaking of gratitude, we should be lucky. We should be lucky that it's given to us for us to refine, because we have a job to refine it and make it worthwhile and to extract the value from it. But I digress. The idea of garbage in, garbage out, as much as I dislike that phrase, is highly relevant in an operational analytics world, because it's kind of a pass through. Yeah, we do a little bit of transformation to it. Maybe we do, we concatenate some fields, or we get rid of some null fields, or we do some other munging in the ETL process, and maybe we do a little bit of stuff in the MDM world to try to kind of make things line up, or we do some complex mapping in an ETL process. But if there is badness, inaccuracy in the source, it's gonna probably be reflected in the output, right? Just because of the pipelines and how data pipelines work today. There's not a lot of extremely complex refinement of the data happening. There's just not. The most complex, I would argue, is MDM, right? And there's a lot of companies still not even doing MDM. So if you're just doing some mappings and you're doing some basic transformations, there's not a lot of extremely complex processing that is happening. That means that if the data isn't accurate coming in, chances are pretty good it's going to be inaccurate going out. Okay. That is old school operational analytics. New advanced analytics, predictive prescriptive analytics, it's a different world, man. It is a different world. Because we go from a world of being rules-based, highly deterministic, okay, if-thens that are highly rules-based, highly deterministic, highly static, really resistant to change. That's old school world. New school, AI world, is probabilistic. It's not deterministic, it's probabilistic. It goes from it is or else to maybe. Right? It might be. Not only that, but in this new world, there's a lot of hands moving here, folks. There's my dog barking in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. That's Teddy. He's deaf, so he barks like a hyena because he can't hear himself. I'm rambling today. In this new world, it's probabilistic. It's not. And it's outcome driven. It's utility driven. So you can build algorithms that have defined utility function that say, this is what I want you to do. And it can be trained, and it will learn over time, and it will improve over time. So comparing apples to apples, an operational old school ETL pipeline to this thing that operates completely differently, totally different world. To say that garbage in, garbage out is going to paralyze us in an advanced analytics world is your indication that whoever is saying that doesn't really have a full grasp on how this world works, because it's different. It's different. We go from a place where you break one rule, maybe your entire pipeline fails, right? Like columns aren't where columns are supposed to be. Poof, pipeline fails. In this world over here, different thing altogether. Different thing altogether. So we do ourselves a disservice when we try to do an apples to apples across these two worlds. Look at me, wax on, wax off, Mr. Miyagi. We do ourselves a disservice when we compare these things because they're inherently different. They are inherently different. Is there going to be a garbage, God, I hate that phrase, a data quality challenge in the world of artificial intelligence? Of course, if you are feeding, for example, The example that Mahendra gave up earlier was talking about if we fed a bunch of information to an LLM, right, and told the LLM the information was correct when in fact it was incorrect, there's going to be a bad outcome there. There's going to be a bad outcome there. So data quality is still going to be relevant in a world of artificial intelligence. But I'm here to tell you, folks, it's going to be far less relevant. Another thing to consider is that this world, this one, is operating at a scale this world can't even imagine. It can't even imagine. I'll give you an example. Let's assume I'm a data steward. And I've done data stewardship in the past. Hours and hours and hours and hours of it. Checking the clock. I don't want to tell you all my data stewardship stories. But imagine I'm young Malcolm, and I'm a Salesforce administrator, because I was. And I'm doing some data stewardship on some CRM records. And I've got Acme Inc. and Acme Co. Right? And I'm in old school predictive or operational analytics. I'm in the old school world, and I'm looking at Acme Inc. and Acme Co. And I see a handful of fields. Yeah, maybe company name, address, maybe a SIC code, maybe a NAICS code, maybe number of employees, revenue, phone number, website, a few other things. But I'm largely looking at these things in a vacuum, right? Like it's a vacuum. Maybe I know this one came from Oracle. Maybe I know this one came from Salesforce. Maybe I know this one was created 2 weeks ago and this one was just created. But I'm basically operating blind, right? And I'm being asked to make a decision about, are these the same thing? Yeah, they look okay. They look reasonably well, right? And I have a governance policy. Here's my defined governance policy that gives me actually the rules to apply when making a decision about whether this is one thing or two things. A lot easier with MDM software, but let's imagine you don't. You don't have MDM software, and you're having to decide, is this one thing or is this two things? And that's basically it, right? Like I've got some guidelines, right? I've got these two records, and I got my brain. I'll figure out, I think they're the same. Okay. That's where we are, old school. This is how things have always been done. Classic data quality MDM use case. Now, let's imagine we're in this world. Over here, we're in the AI-enabled world now, where birds are chirping and things are happy. Just kidding. Imagine a world where now all of a sudden, there's these two records. And AI, let's just call it AI, okay? Because it's not just AI, it's going to be knowledge graphs, it's going to be ML, it's going to be a whole bunch of other things. Can see every transaction ever associated to those records. Every customer service ticket, every invoice sent, every customer email sent, every inbound phone call to the 1-800 number for support, everything. Imagine a world where AI can see every single one of these transactions. Imagine a world where AI can see, did those transactions happen quickly or slowly? Did they happen successfully or were there failures? Did the email bounce that we sent to that email address? And on and on and on. We go from a world where highly deterministic. I have some rules that my data governance committee wrote for me. Thank you, data governance committee. I've got some basic rules. I've got Google. Maybe I have Dun & Bradstreet. Maybe I have a few other tools, but highly deterministic. If then, to this other world that's looking at every transaction ever for those records. This is where it's so important to think about these technologies differently, because I'm having conversations right now with data leaders who were saying, oh, well, AI could never do that as well as a human being. Are you kidding me? like me, Malcolm the data steward, with my rules, trying to sit in Salesforce, cranking through as many records as I can before lunch, because I've got certain SLA that I need to hit, because we're doing a data cleanup, versus that other world that can do everything that I described like that. And by the way, the rules would be determined by the business outcome. Old world, Data governance committee. And by the way, I'm holding up my Spectrum cable bill. Old world rules, if-thens, series of if-thens, right? Determined by a data governance committee, based on attributes of the data, that customer record. Is this field here? Is it not here? Is the field accurate? Is the field not accurate? Deterministic old school world. New world, the rules will be determined by business outcomes. Did the outcomes happen? Was the invoice sent? Was the revenue recognized? Did the customer receive the goods? Did the goods show up on the pallet in the loading bay on time? Yes, 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 yes. No, yes, no, yep. In the future, data quality will be defined by whether or not the business is operating efficiently, not the business rules. And this is the type of mindset we need to get our heads around. This is what we need to we need to start thinking of data differently. We need to be thinking in a way of probabilities, in a way of scale that historically we've just never thought about. We've thought about these highly deterministic one-off rules, but in this world over here, computers are going to be doing this stuff, boom, and at a scale we could never, ever do. So that's another way that we need to be AI ready. We need to stop thinking and assuming that the old rules, the old world, deterministic approaches, pass, fail, if then, are valid in that rule, in this new world, because they're not. They won't be. It'll be probabilities. And the probability, the minimum bar you need for marketing will be lower than the minimum bar you need for finance. And by the way, that'll happen automatically because the systems will know the use case. We will know that this report is for the CEO or the CFO, and you need to apply this quality standard to it. It'll also know whether the rules can be different or whether the bar can be lower and the probability could be lower. A good example is matching. We talked about earlier, the confidence levels around a match. So anyway, this is another area how, if you want to be AI ready, we need to stop thinking that the world of classic old school operational analytics is exactly how things work in the future, because it isn't. It isn't. So hopefully that makes sense. I mean, I know I tend to opine on this, but I mean, when we are the data leaders, right, where AI in theory would live in our organizations, we need to be the ones talking with expertise around this stuff. And when we go into our organizations and start talking about how we're all going to be training LLMs to build pie charts and graphs, no, we're not. And things work completely and totally differently. And you're going to get different outcomes, and it's just an entirely new way of thinking. All of our rules will need to be revisited, and that'll be a good thing. Number 3. So number 1 was let's up our game around AI technology. Number 2 was think differently about how this stuff works. Think in a probabilistic way instead of a deterministic way. Think about data quality through the lens of business outcomes, not data-based rules. And I try to draw that distinction carefully. Data-based rules. So that's number 2. Number 3, we need, for those of us who don't have data science functions today, and that's about 50%. I was doing some research last night or the other night in my COVID-induced brain fog. About 50% of companies have a data science function. The data varies here. It's tough to say whether those data scientists are living within certain business functions like a marketing function or not actually supporting an enterprise-wide data and analytics function, but it's about 50-50. For those 50% of companies who do not have a data science function, who don't know much about data science, one of the things you need to do to become more AI ready is understand how data science functions work. Data science functions, like the role of a data scientist. Now, if there are data scientists that are tuned in today, keep me honest. Those roles, data science roles, typically work very differently than classic operational analytics, right? A data science function is an inherently creative and inherently iterative process involving a lot of experimentation. And perhaps more importantly, to some of the data and analytics leaders who have been around a while, generally, not always, but generally, those data science people are not using the outputs of your traditional data pipelines. They're not using the outputs of MDM and data quality platforms. They're not using the data sitting in your catalog. They're going straight to the source to get the data. The reason why they're doing that, the reason why is so they can control the behavior of their models. They can control the behavior of what they're doing, their code that they're writing. So let's take MDM as an example. Companies are out there implementing MDM. They're spending a lot of money on it to create these gold master records. Here's the table of the customer master records. And generally, data scientists aren't using them. They aren't, for a lot of different reasons, but primarily because they can't control what happened in that MDM process, and they don't necessarily know what happened. They can't say with certainty, here are the match rules that were used. Here's the logic that were used to create that gold master record. And if there's any ambiguity there, a data scientist will just go right back to the source and write custom Python or custom R for entity resolution, AKA matching. So you got matching happening in an MDM to support those classic operational analytical use cases. Then you got data scientists over here doing a completely separate thing in basically a siloed operation where they are iterating over and over and over and over again, experimenting over and over and over again. This is why 80% of models that data scientists produce never make it to production, because it's it is a highly iterative, experimentation-driven process where they are trying to figure out, okay, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Is this combination of variables going to work? Is this combination of variables going to work? To produce the desired outcome, to support the utility function that they are trying to model through their algorithms. So what this means is that in my conversations I was having this week or last week or the last few weeks, you'd have data leaders saying, well, we're not AI ready because we need to get a data house in order. We need to get our data house in order. We need to go buy catalogs and governance platforms and MDM and data quality tools and integration tools, and we need to go get our data house in order. When in reality, most data scientists are just getting it straight from the source. They're just going and getting data straight out of from wherever. So I'm not saying that's good or that's bad. It's just the reality, because the role of data scientist is fundamentally different than the role of somebody building a bar chart, a bar graph. It just is. It just is. So if you're a data and analytics leader, or if you're in that function and you're trying to understand, okay, how do I get more AI ready? Understand what it means to employ data scientists, how they work, understand the best way to optimize what they do, talk to some data scientists, figure out the tools they're using, they're not using. I do think that they do need to be using some of those classic, tools like data quality and MDM. But to do that requires infrastructure, requires transparency that often isn't there today. Meaning, do you have the ability to show complete lineage of all your data? Because that's what a data scientist is going to ask. Where did it come from? Who touched it? Right? Do you have the ability to provide complete transparency around all of your MDM related processes? Because that's what the data scientist is going to ask. What rules were used to match these records together? Different way of thinking. We need to up our game when it comes to data science. If you don't have that function today, I'm not saying you need to go get it. I'm saying you need to be more up to speed on how those processes work and how they are optimized in most organizations. So that's what I had to share today around being more AI ready. I think we just, as a general rule, guys, we just need to learn a lot more about this space. And there are some companies that have data science functions that are some of these big companies that are actually building some of these models. I would argue a lot of them already get it, and they are accelerating. And those of us that don't get it yet, we need to start getting it quick, because this is, the horse is out of the barn. Pick your metaphor. We're not turning back. There's going to be incredible productivity gains through these technologies over the coming years, particularly in our space, because it's ripe for it. Those old ways of thinking, those old ways of managing data quality, the old ways aren't scalable. They just aren't. Ask any data steward who waved pieces of paper around for a living, like me. Thanks, everybody. So great that you could join today. Thank you for joining another episode of CDO Matters Live. Happy Friday. Happy Thanksgiving to my American friends. Thank you for everybody for tuning in from around the globe. I value your engagement. I value your questions. I value your community. We'll see you next month. Thanks all.